Good afternoon. My name's Gerard Lennox, and I'm the lucky recipient of a number of posts with different companies, which gives me a view across many different ways of working. Much of what I'm sharing with you today has come from my work, as Katrina said, over the last 3 years with Cuba New Media, the parent company of Symphony. For some time I've been working with mainly B2B organizations, both large and small, who've been involved with the selling of high-volume products and services. This has included major consultancies, associations, legal and other professional services, as well as quite a few not-for-profit organizations. The result is my realization that business is really a collection of systems and processes, especially large and growing businesses who need the systems in order to replicate growth. And this has led to me coining the term replicable customer processes. And that, in a way, forms the basis of this talk. But nonetheless, let's start at the very beginning. The technology, as usual, is in the way at this point. Our subject today is return on investment, particularly with events. But before we talk about ROI, we need to understand what it is we're trying to achieve, else we may just measure the wrong things. So, why are we doing this event or series of events? Well, there's a number of reasons that spring to mind. A very common one is glory. Maybe yours, maybe somebody else's, but nonetheless it's just because it's nice to do. The most common one is because someone else told you to do it. More realistically, I hope, it's because we want to increase our brand or reputation one way or another. We could also be trying to educate our audience. And of course the two old-fashioned staples, to get leads and to make sales. I'll assume for the rest of this talk that we're concentrating on what could loosely be called marketing events, by which I mean any event where face-to-face or virtual meetings such as this are involved because we're interested in building a business relationship with a person or organization. Notice I don't limit this to sales and lead generation, as education in a marketing sense is a major part of why we use events in our marketing mix. Also, I'm not restricting this to purely customers, because influencers and indeed our own team are just as important in the marketing mix. How many of us have got a sales force, a distributor network, somebody we have to bring into the equation from time to time? So let's move on now, if I may, and start looking at what we mean by return on investment. Well, the definition of return of investment could be this lot: a performance measure used to evaluate the efficiency of an investment or to compare the efficiency of a number of different investments, and so on and so on. And that is often shown in this formula. But I don't know about you, but I'm not quite sure what gains from investment is, whether it refers to the proceeds obtained from selling the investment or new business or whatever. So I've looked up a few other formulas which seem to capture, I think, more the marketing view of what return on investment is about. So, very simple one: gross profit, marketing investment gross profit minus marketing investment divided by marketing investment shown as a percentage. Another one that a lot of marketeers like is the customer lifetime value. Take that away from your marketing investment, divide by the marketing investment, and you see a return on your initial investment. But of course then it starts to get really clever, because how do we actually determine that? So do we take out other expenses? Do we take out profit minus marketing investment minus overhead allocation, that famous line on most people's budget that destroys just about everything they do? Incremental investment. The net result of all this lot is that there's lots of different ways in which you can calculate the return on investment. And one of the links that we'll be sending you is from an organization called MarketingMo, M-A-R-K-I-T-I-N-G-M-O. I recommend having a look at their website. It's not free, but it's very good value, and it's full of some very, very good ideas. But for us, it's important that we can accept that ROI can mean different things to different people, even within our organization. To a senior manager, it could be, why should I spend money and resources and time on this rather than conventional advertising and promotion? And time is often the most important aspect here for people who have quarterly targets to hit. To a marketing practitioner, it could be, how do I show the effectiveness of this event, especially if there is no easy correlation to sales? Well, ROI is important because however we calculate it, the idea is to get an objective measure of effectiveness, which allows for proper planning without any subjective feelings colouring the mix. There are more things we can invest than money. They include resources and time, and probably the most precious of all is time, so don't waste it. And when I think of this, I always think of that great business sage, Yoda from Star Wars. What would Yoda say at this point? And ultimately, I think it comes down to this. You've only got two options, do or not do. Let's move on for a second. Who is our audience? Why would they be there? Do they have to come? Are they captive? Are they coerced? Are they our staff or our distributors? Or are they those free agents, customers, prospects? And if so, why should the free agents, the prospects, the customers come? Think about how to invite them. Think about using email, social media, good old-fashioned surface, mail, the telephone. Always have a multi-step recruitment plan. It's obvious, but people may not see your first invite. And ideally, make sure that you don't re-invite people who've already registered. I'm looking at my colleague Katrina here, who's going a little bit pink round the gills because apparently we re-invited some of you. It just looks a little bit sloppy. So this brings me on to my first tip, for want of a better word. Let's see if I can click the button on here. And it's really very simple. Get delegates at the right point in their buying journey. And by that I mean relative to what you're trying to do. This is particularly important in today's market, where much of the traditional buying cycle happens without anybody from our organization even knowing about it. More and more people, as I'm sure all of you are aware, are conducting their research using the internet. And they've already dismissed potential suppliers long before they start speaking to a salesman. The days of having to talk to the salesman just to find out what's going on are somewhat gone. Indeed, according to Demand Gen's report in 2014 of buyer behavior, an effective content strategy can influence the buyer's journey. So if you think of events as being part of a content strategy, if we do it early in the buying cycle, we can reduce the sales effort and increase the influence of our organization and what our people have got to say. We can plant the ideas, we can plant them as seeds, even if they're going to take a while to grow. And in today's marketplace, they may take a while to grow, not because people are frankly bloody minded, but because their budgeting cycle and their ongoing projects don't allow them to make decisions in this area. But when they're ready, they'll be in touch, especially if you've provided them with help. But equally, late on in the buying cycle, it could be that an event reinforces the ideas, cements the buying decision, and helps ultimately to get a quicker decision once they're ready to go at it. I'm going to send you a link to a couple of articles by a guy called Tom, let me just read this, Masalto. He's Vice President of Marketing at an organization in the States, and he writes extremely well in conjunction with Oracle about matching the content of webinars and events to the buying cycle. And one of the things that I found really interesting here is the way in which these timings have changed over the last few years. So as you can see the wee diagram at the top, it talks about marketing doing the branding awareness one way and another, and then sales doing everything else. And now if you look at the time cycle, it's starting to be marketing still doing the branding and awareness, but nonetheless using a whole stack of tools such as digital and events and so forth, creating this environment in which people have got a lot more information on which they can base their decisions. So what we're trying to do here is understand the good old funnel, the awareness, the consideration phases, the way in which people evaluate the services and offerings and ultimately make their purchasing decision, and make sure that we're providing the right stuff at the right time to the right people. Moving on to our second tip, it's really the most simple and yet the most difficult of the lot. Better targeting of delegates. Getting the people you want and who want to speak to you. And the key to that is making it relevant to them. Now, most of you have invested your valuable time today because of the title of this little presentation. That's pretty much all you had to go on. And therefore, I assume that it is of interest to you. So if I can get one message across to you, it's always think what's in it for them and what risks are there in them attending. Then you have to start thinking about, is it better to have a face-to-face event, or will an anonymous meeting such as this be better? Do the benefits of networking between your attendees outweigh the security of a webinar and the time the cost that they will bear in attending your meeting? I learned this lesson in a way a few months ago when I was working with a tax advice company. They were putting together a package to work with estate agents who act as a letting agent for landlords. And the idea was that they would do joint propositions to their landlords and everybody would gain out of this. The only problem was when they organized a face-to-face seminar, it was very badly attended because none of the invitees wanted their competitors to know what they were doing. So how do we actually achieve this one way and another? Well, if I just flick through my slides here, it's really all to do with marketing personas. Now, this is a term which has come about over the last few months. In fact, it's been around for at least 5 and if not 10 years. Some people would define a marketing persona as a way by which businesses can get closer to their customers. This is probably the most common definition I've seen one way and another. It allows us to understand what our customers are thinking about. And I've been working with companies like Oracle and the major management consultancies, Bain & Co. over the last few years, and they are spending inordinate amounts of time making sure that they only speak to the right people, but most importantly, about the right things. So I suggest to you that one of the most important things you can do is understand your ideal customer, what problems they have, and in particular what goals and measures they have. Here's a little example of what I mean. It acts as a bit of a template. I borrowed this from Kevin Lee at blog.bufferapp.com, and he gives a very good step-by-step guide on how to build a persona or personas, which you can then use as the basis for your content that you're going to use on social media or whatever, but most importantly, what should be the subjects of your events. Using this as a template, people build up things that are as complicated as this. And here you'll see somebody who's called Corinne. It's obviously a made-up name, although she appears to work for a real company. But it's a marketing persona. It tells you what job they do, it tells you the challenges that they face at work, and it tells you the information that they're looking for one way and another from an event or from a website. Again, I bring you back to Kevin Lee, who gives a very good example of how these should be built. And from there, we get all manner of interesting things going on. And one of the things that I find most interesting is that marketeers are often doing the wrong part of their job, particularly in relation to events, because marketeers think that they have to explain what their company does. And I argue that that isn't marketing's job. Really, marketing's job should be to understand the customer's pain and problems and then be able to prove that their company can help. It's up to others to explain the detail. Otherwise, marketing would be the fee earners and technicians, and that doesn't seem right to me. So if you can understand your customers' problems and aspirations, then you're well on your way to making your invitation speak to those problems and aspirations, and that's got to be more effective when it comes to getting the right people in the right place at the right time if you've got the right solution. I would suggest to you that tips 1 and 2 can be thought of as the classic relevancy and timeliness. Let's move on for a second to tip number 3. And this is really very straightforward. Become an expert in your customers' problems, not your solutions. Sorry, that was tip number 2. What happened to tip 3? There we go. Tip 3, moving on. Time, as they say, is flipping away. Let's make it really, really easy to register. Don't let the technology get in the way. Give multiple ways of registering. Register online, register by email, register by phone. But ask for a minimum amount of information. There's a load of research. Much of it's been done by an organization that I'm becoming very familiar with in terms of how effective they are, called HubSpot, H-U-B-S-P-O-T. They're the marketing automation company. And they've done some research in 2 areas. In fact, one showed that just asking for a phone number or one other piece of personal data reduced the conversion rate by 5% per piece of data. In fact, they started researching this back in 2010 when a guy called Dan Zarala researched over 40,000 contact forms that different people had used. And he discovered that the conversion rate improves by about 50% when the number of form fields, i.e. bits of information that you ask for, are reduced from 4 to 3. So just eliminating one form field in his research increased the conversion by 50%. Think about it. I didn't need your phone number to get you to listen to me today. If you're interested, you'll phone me. Again, I've included a few links on conversion rate optimization on landing pages, and I think some of you will find that interesting as we go along. And then people say to me, yeah, well, hang on a minute, Gerard, but I need more information. I'm running an event. I need to know that they're lactose intolerant or that they can't eat peanuts or whatever. Well, yeah, that's perfectly reasonable questions, particularly if you're going to feed them. But wouldn't it be better to ask them that after they've registered? Do it in such a way that you're starting to create an ongoing relationship. So it's not just give us all your information and then we might come and shout at you one way and another. Part and parcel of this is meaning that you've got to be on top of your administration. Long gone are the days of relying on emails with registrations being returned to a generic mailbox and then recorded in spreadsheets. It takes time, it's difficult to share, and it leads to miscommunication. In fact, nowadays, anybody who's not using the online tools that are available is really not doing themselves any favors. Oh, we appear to have got a little thing talking to us here. Sorry about that. And indeed, this is the point where I do my shameless plug, my one and only shameless plug, I should mention, because it's why the Symphony team have developed an intranet-based events calendar module. And the idea behind it is that it shows the many stakeholders within your business what's happening without them having to come to you quickly. They can see the events that they're on. They can see how many attendees there are. They can click on it and they can dive down in to see who's been invited, who's coming, who's not coming, or whatever. This gives them visibility of your efforts without you having to do anything. Because not only have you got to get people to the events, you've got to tell people that you're getting people to the events. Let's move on to tip number 4. Again, really simple. Ensure that people actually attend. Because non-attendees are a little bit like old newspapers. They're not much use except to light a fire. So find reasons to keep in touch. Solicit questions in advance, send pre-session briefing notes, background papers, send electronic calendar entries to go into Outlook or Gmail. Never be afraid of sending reminders, because if they're not going to show up, that's what's going to happen anyway, but at least you've reminded them. And repeat the online calendar entry. They may have forgotten, they may not have done anything else about it in the first place. And don't forget, you can always ask them if they want to invite anybody else. So to my final and 5th tip. Again, pretty obvious, except in the detail. Follow up. Have a strategy in mind. As an example, you've had emails from us over the last few days, but you're also going to get an email tomorrow, I believe, tomorrow morning, sometime around coffee break. And in that email will be all the links to the various things I've talked about in this talk, and 1 or 2 more things. And there'll probably be a link to a recording of this session, so you can pass it on to your friends if you think it's got any value to it. Think of your strategy in advance, but don't be afraid to adapt it, because if something that happened during or after the event, did you get a specific question? How can you help the potential customer? You're responsible for lead nurturing, not sales or fee earners. And in fact, I'm so keen on this that I've created a little session here all about it. Because if you think about it, who else is going to do that lead nurturing? You can't rely on your principals, your salespeople, following it up immediately. They may have other things to do. So that raises the question of, should you be using marketing automation tools such as HubSpot or Eloqua, or those built into modern content management systems such as Kentico, Sitefinity or Sitecore? In the email that you'll receive tomorrow, I've included a few links to articles about using such marketing automation tools. How do you keep a dialogue going that's both timely and relevant to the people that you're talking to, so that when they're ready to talk to you, you're ready to talk to them, and most importantly, they know who you are. One other thing that I thought might be of interest to everybody is this little ebook, which you can register for if you go onto this web address at HubSpot. They did some research based on over 1,000 organizations that ran marketing events and how people followed it up or didn't follow it up, what techniques they used, what timings they used, what they talked about, and the results that they got from that. It's fascinating reading, doesn't take too long to get through, but it's a bit eye-opening one way and another. So a couple of other things. Do you need to record your attendees' attendance into your CRM system? Should it be automatic? Or is it easier and quicker just to type it in? Both are possible. You could even use a tool like Zapier to link them together, even if there wasn't a clever link. And for all marketeers, you just got to assume that no one else is going to follow up. Your salespeople and principals will be busy. They may not get around to following up, especially if there's no immediate prospect of a piece of business. It's up to you to get to that return on investment. After all, it's your investment, not theirs. I said it before and it bears repeating. You're responsible for lead nurturing, not salespeople, not fee earners. I've not talked about the content of the event. That's for another day, one way and another. In fact, it's a subject in its own right, one way and another. And if people are interested, If you'd like to fill in one of the surveys that we send you, we'll identify the sort of topics that people would like to follow up with regard to content and so forth. But now, if I may, I'd like to take this opportunity to ask you to help me. I'm in the process of starting a research exercise with Jane Tattersall, who's the Events Management course leader at Sheffield Hallam University. This course is recognised as one of the best event management courses in the UK, mainly because of its solid background in business management. I had to say that because Max, who's one of our team, is a recent graduate of it, and so far it seems to be working out quite well. The point about this research is that we've got together, and our objective is to understand how events work or don't work in the marketing mix of business-to-business companies. If I may, I would like to invite you to take part in this research, from which I hope we'll all gain, because of course everybody who's involved in the research will get a copy of it. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you very much for listening to us. If any of you would like to talk to us about this research or anything else, please don't hesitate to contact me one way or another. You can reach me at pretty much any time on this email address, glennox@cuba.co.uk, and the rest of the team are more than happy to speak to you. I thank you again for listening. If there are any questions, we'll stay on the line for a few minutes. Otherwise, thank you all very much indeed for your time. Bye-bye.